7 ways that moving to the UK completely shattered my definition of success, and why this so-called simple life isn't a downgrade like we're told in the United States. It's actually a massive vindication. Growing up in the US, we're indoctrinated to believe that success looks like a specific set of things. A 3,000 square foot house, 2 brand new SUVs in the driveway, and a salary that keeps climbing until you die. We're taught that if you don't have those things, you're failing. I mean, after all, that's the American dream, right? But honestly, when you step outside of the US bubble, you do actually start to see exactly what they mean when Europeans say things like, Americans are rich in things, but extremely poor in time. Since moving here, my house is smaller, much smaller. My car is smaller when I drive it, which isn't often. My stuff pile is significantly smaller. By American metrics, my standard of living probably has dropped, but my quality of life, that's skyrocketed. And it hits hard when you realize that you've spent 40 plus years chasing the wrong rabbit down the hole. Today, we're going to dig into 7 specific ways the UK vindicates a simpler existence, and why walking away from hustle culture in the US isn't giving up, it's actually waking up. We have to start with the safety net. In the US, there is this low-level background of anxiety that hums in your brain 24/7. It's the fear that one bad day, one cancer diagnosis, one child breaking their leg, one layoff, one car accident, it can take away everything that you've built. We call it hustling, but it's actually just survival mode that's disguised as ambition. Where here in the UK, there are safety nets in place. Granted, the NHS is not perfect and definitely needs help. We have to be fair. People complain about wait times. Some people do have horrific experiences, and I get that, not taking anything away from that. But nobody here in the UK is losing their house because they got sick. Nobody is Ubering to the ER because they can't afford the ambulance. That absence of catastrophic financial fear completely changes your brain chemistry. It allows you to enjoy a simpler life because you aren't hoarding cash for a rainy day that might wipe you out. You don't know what you don't know until that weight's completely lifted off your shoulders, and it allows you to breathe a little bit. I realized that in the US, I wasn't working hard because I loved success and was constantly trying to achieve new things. I was working hard because I was terrified of falling through the cracks. There's a profound difference there, and one that shouldn't be ignored. Number 2. Let's talk about isolation versus community. In the United States suburbs, where most of my life was lived, we live in beautiful, large, air-conditioned boxes. Actually, I think some people in the city probably live similarly. We drive from the garage to the office garage or parking lot, then maybe to a store garage or parking lot, then back home. You can go weeks without having a genuine, unplanned interaction with a neighbor. Not because you don't want to, but just because you're kind of conditioned to perform this routine on a regular basis. And that hits me really hard now that I'm here in the UK. Because the simple life here involves what sociologists call third places. The pub, the local high street, the community center, the bus, the public transportation systems. Places where you can just exist around other people without having to spend a lot of money, pay a cover charge, or have an overabundance of stimulation in the process. I can walk to a pub. I can see the same people. Sometimes I see new people. We talk about the weather, which of course is a stereotype, but it is true. We do talk about the weather a lot. But it actually connects you. In the States, we substitute square footage for community, land mass for connection. We buy big houses to entertain people because there's nowhere else to go to entertain people and connect. But when we're then complain about the big holidays that we have all the people at our house at all the time. Because we're basically too tired from working 24/7 to pay for the house to actually have anyone over or deal with all of the drama and chaos that comes along with it. It doesn't make any sense. Here, a wealthy life involves walking down the street, saying hello to Dave at the corner shop, having a quick little conversation about an upcoming holiday, and then going about our day. It sounds trivial, but as human beings, that human connection, that contact actually does wonders for us. As I've learned, it is definitely worth a lot more than having a guest bedroom that I never used. Number 3 is the weaponization of productivity. I have no problem getting up every morning and working hard. I work for myself now, and I work harder than I ever have in my entire life working a job. I've done the working hard mantra my entire life, in one form or another. But in the United States, if you aren't monetizing your hobby, if you aren't side hustling or grinding constantly, you're lazy. And rest is seen as a weakness. Taking a day off, you have to be deathly ill or almost on your way to be admitted to the hospital. That is exactly what it looks like from the outside looking in. In the UK, there's more respect for leisure. And it feels almost illegal to my American brain sometimes. I still grapple with it. People take their annual leave, all of their annual leave. They don't check emails at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. This simple life here means understanding that your job is what you do, part of your life, but not who you are. It funds your life. It is not the end all and be all of your life. I remember telling a British friend a story one time about how much I worked when I worked in the office back in the States. And I sort of expected a pat on the back because that's like what a lot of Americans would have done. And instead, this British friend just looked at me with lots and lots of pity, because context is everything, right? In the bubble, burnout is a badge of honor. But out here, it's just a failure of management. And you're allowed to call that out. Actually, you are required and expected to call it out. There are some places that are following a little bit more of an American model, and I've unfortunately had a lot of experience with those places here in the UK, and that's forced me to kind of find the path of working on my own. But I do think that overall still the British culture is much better at just holding people in positions of authority and power accountable when it's warranted, and less as though you just have to do what you're told because they are in that position of power. You are allowed to reclaim your time, especially considering it's the ultimate form of wealth. British people, British culture recognizes that and rewards you for taking that time, whereas America actually punishes you for it. This next one hits a bit hard. Number 4, the dignity of aging. We are told in the States that if you don't save millions for retirement, you're absolutely doomed. And sadly, that's often true. I mean, I've heard stories of seniors who are retired and they live on dog food. Their cupboards are filled with cans of dog food because that's all they can afford to eat. And society thinks this is okay. It's not okay. It's very cultural as well. Once you stop being productive, once you stop being useful to the system, once you stop contributing to the GDP, society in America just kind of wants you to disappear and go away. I've seen so many people who are of retirement age, 60s, 70s, 80s, walking to the shops here in the UK. You get a free bus pass so you could still be mobile and you could still participate in society. They're still a fundamental part of the fabric of every village and community and town here in the UK. They're not written off because they're not useful anymore. They're not hidden away out of sight so that we don't have to deal with the fact that they're aging and they require more care or more understanding or more empathy. When you're living a simple life here in the UK, you don't need a car to survive, which means you can keep your independence longer, and you don't become a prisoner in your own home because your eyesight goes, or you can't drive a 6-lane highway anymore. It's so sad that in the US, we've built a country where you need the reflexes of a fighter pilot just to buy a gallon of milk. That you've lived and contributed to society for 7-8 decades, and then you have to live like an animal in the golden years of your life. And heaven forbid, you have any kind of chronic illness or medical problem that you have to deal with on top of all of that. This isn't freedom. It's a very severe design flaw in the American system. Number 5 is food. I mean, I know we talk about food a lot, but I do want to mention this because I do think it has a lot to do with how the society feels, functions, and participates. Not just from a health perspective, but from a wealth perspective. The wealth of American food is often measured in volume. Giant portions, all-you-can-eat competitions, buffets out the wazoo. But if you look at the ingredient list, it's more like a chemistry experiment. I mean, even fruit is given this like waxy polish and are pumped with preservatives during the growth process in order to sustain the transit time, that it takes to get from one side of the country to the other and still be marketable when it gets to the grocery store 3 days later. The simple life vindication in the UK is realizing that eating well doesn't mean eating more or a lot. It means eating real food. I go to the local butcher now. I buy less meat, but it's actual meat. It's not pumped full of things that I can't pronounce. If you just look at it, you can see the difference. If you taste it, you can tell the difference. Vegetables don't last nearly as long, but they taste like they just came from the ground and not a factory. We're taught that the US feeds the world, and maybe that's true when you look at it as bulk, but the amount of waste that we have when it comes to food in the US is astronomical. We have companies that have policies in place where their employees actually destroy food at the end of the day that they can no longer sell, just so that some homeless person doesn't go through the dumpster. The homeless person that has nothing to eat is trying to find food that you can't sell anyway, but they would rather destroy that food than give it to someone who actually needs it in their society, in their community. The difference is the quality of life, okay? That you get to eat fresh, local food without needing a degree in toxicology to read the label. And that's real wealth. And that food is discounted when it's about to go bad or today's the last day that you can eat something in order to make sure that somebody who can't afford a lot of food or someone who might be struggling can actually still eat healthy. That is the real wealth, true health. You can't buy that in a drive-thru, all right, America? Let's go. Wake up. Number 6 is something I didn't really expect. The relief of having fewer choices. This is kind of a paradox because in the US, we think we have freedom by having 50 types of toothpaste. Even though there's probably maybe 5 companies that own all those different brands of toothpaste. So it's the illusion of choice, but you still have that 50 types of toothpaste choice, right? We call it consumer choice, but it's honestly just decision fatigue. I mean, sometimes it's exhausting, and we spend so much mental energy comparing specs on things that don't actually matter. Living a simpler life here in the UK, where maybe you don't have Amazon delivering every 2 hours, and you don't have 24-hour access to everything, but it actually slows you down in a good way. You're making more thoughtful choices. It forces you to be more intentional about your choices. And you stop buying things just to fill a void, and you stop buying things just based on the advertising or recognition from the advertising when you're in the aisle because you are overwhelmed with the amount of choices in front of you. You buy what you need and you live with what you have. The consumerist itch does exist here in the UK, but it's not a need as much as it is in America. You don't need that next package to arrive just to feel something. You don't have to overbuy for Christmas just to compensate for the fact that you haven't been around for the rest of the year. And let me tell you, that silence that you get from not having to make choices 24/7, it's quite peaceful. And finally, number 7, the ultimate wealth, in my opinion, safety. I've talked about this before as well, but it always bears repeating because to me, it's the foundation of everything. And I know there's going to be people out there that say the UK isn't safe. We can't go to London. We can't go to any of our cities. Everybody's in danger. It's not the case. In my opinion, in my experience and the conversations that I've had with British people who have never really left the island, that's not the case. I'm not saying there's no crime here in the UK, but it's definitely a different type of crime. You cannot have a high quality of life if your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats. Life in the United States is not about constantly being in fear of being shot or constantly being in fear of being mugged or hurt. It's more of the fact that we're constantly in fear because we don't know. There's no communal understanding or communal safety guide that keeps everyone, or at least the majority of people, safe. Whereas if something happens, someone else is going to step in to help you. You're literally on your own from birth, in most cases. We have gated communities We have alarm systems everywhere, guards in our school, actual police officers with guns and tasers in our schools, armed police people stopping you for running a red light, military showing up when you're protesting. We pay a fortune in order to buy the illusion of safety because we are taught that the public sphere isn't safe. Here in the UK, I believe that simple life means I don't have to check for the exits when I walk into a movie theater, worrying if someone there is going to start shooting indiscriminately. And is going to be able to take out a bunch of lives because they have an automatic weapon. I don't worry about my child doing an active shooter drill on a regular basis that basically tells them to just hide in a corner and hope for the best. Yes, there is crime in the UK, as I mentioned before. I have to be vigilant when I go to cities or whenever there's crowds of people because you don't ever know if someone's going to do something. But I do know that there's not a threat of some random person, some young kid or some untrained person that has an AK-47 randomly shooting into a crowd just because. In my opinion, that's a luxury that no amount of money that can be made or no amount of money that could be spent can buy you. Because even if you're rich in the United States, you're not safe. You still have to go out into the real world eventually. Yeah, you might have a few extra security guards and stuff, but that doesn't mean that the same thing won't happen to you. As I said before, I want to be fair. The crime exists everywhere. UK has its issues that it needs to deal with, and I'm not going to discount that in any way. But the nature of the threat is what the difference is between the US and the UK. And realizing that I don't have to drop my kid off at school every single day with a pit in my stomach and hold my breath until the moment they walk through the door that I can actually feel comfortable again. To me, that's the biggest vindication of all. So a lot of people will think I am full of it. A lot of people will think that this simple life that I lead here in the UK is a complete downgrade. And to be honest, if you measure life by the size of your refrigerator or the horsepower of your truck, then yeah, maybe. But if you're similar to me, where you measure quality of life by blood pressure and connection with our neighbors and a sense of safety and having actual time to enjoy your life, that's not a downgrade. It's actually an upgrade. It's such a tremendous upgrade that I don't think I could ever put it into words fully. And there's a little guilt involved in that, to be honest. But I know that my family is taken care of, and I know that I'm doing everything I can. And it's a shame that we had to leave the greatest country on earth to find it.